Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sound Money Matters Live. This is your host, Daniel Diaz at Citizens for Sound Money. And man, we have an amazing guest for you. I love his story. He interviewed me earlier today for his channel. His name is Jared. He is the stacking surfer, and his background is amazing. He comes from a banking background, and then he found his way to Bullion. I'm going to let him tell that story. And without any further ado, let's welcome the stacking surfer. Jared.
Daniel, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good, man. Likewise. Thank you for coming on the channel. And it's interesting. You interviewed me for your channel today, and now I'm interviewing you for our channel. So it worked out well.
Good. So we'll get that interview up tomorrow. I'll have that launch tomorrow on my channel so you guys can see that. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's so interesting how one's life goes. For me, if I look at my resume, it's all over the place. I've been all over the place, and I kind of stopped fighting my destiny a long time ago, and I got into the flow, and I just let it take me kind of where the opportunities go, and everything seems to go much more smoothly that way. And I've ended up here in the precious metals sector to the point where this has not only just been a hobby, it's been a passion. It's something I'm looking to build a career around as well. In helping people, waking them up to the fact of the importance of sound money, what the difference is between money and currency. And having come from a banking background, I understand what it looks like, what banks do, how they work, how they function. And I've come to really despise fractional reserve lending. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of how it's going.
Yeah, and before we get into your story, we have a tradition for brand new guests that our late founder, Jim Forsyth, which you actually met. You actually told me on when you interviewed me that he gave you your first free silver back in 2021, 2022 with the 1/5 ounce rounds. He created these 3D minted holders that held 2 ounces. Man, who would have thought it would be over $120 now for 2 ounces of silver, man? But those two questions are the first one. Why is sound money important?
Yeah, so here's the reason I think sound money is important. You need something that has an intrinsic value to it, okay? And at the end of the day, some people might argue gold and silver doesn't have an intrinsic value, but I would disagree with that. At the end of the day, if we really get down to someone needing the very bare necessities, it might be food. But we really need a medium exchange. We need something that can be divisible. We need something that you can transfer to another person. We need something that can be verified. You can verify gold and silver. And you also need something that is going to, last the test of time. These are metals, in my opinion. It's God's money. It's metals that have been here. Gold is created in the heart of a dying star. And these are things that are kind of on the surface, but we're starting to, exhaust what you can find on the surface, at least for silver. Gold, you've got to dig a lot deeper. And so, there is the ability to find more of these metals over time, but for the most part, it takes a lot of energy. And so it's something that is scarce, and it's something that can be used for a lot of other uses. So to me, why do we need sound money? It's because it's the foundation of everything that underlies a society. If it was just you and your kids living on a farm and you never interacted with another person, maybe you don't need to have money. But once you're in a society, you definitely need a way of exchanging your goods and services. I work in the AI space, and so I help companies, better market to their customers. And I create a situation where things are much better for the customer as well. They find the answers they need more quickly, and that creates value. And if I want to go and be able to go buy food, it's hard for me to do it without some kind of a medium of exchange. And so the reason the sound money is important, though, is because sound money also has what I would call a fixed value, not necessarily a fixed price, but a fixed value. And so when you look at gold and silver with prices rising today, the reason that those are rising is because the fiat or the US dollar value is going down. They actually haven't changed price in 6,000 years. Or I shouldn't say the price. They haven't changed value in 6,000 years. Now, every once in a while, there's a lot of interest in the metals to the point where you can get a little bit more exchange for it than you would otherwise. So you could say that there's a little bit more of a value there. But in reality, the metals themselves did not change. nothing happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Gold is silver. Gold and silver are the only forms of money, right? And you pointed out it's a long-term store of value. Look, the dollar is a store of value, but it's a short-term store of value. Tobacco leaves are a store of value. Anything can be a store of value, but a long-term value is the most important thing. And that's what we say at 6% Money, that gold and silver are freedom. And that's why it's important, because fiat currency, the roots of fiat currency, the modern form through the control of the central banks, is actually rooted in Karl Marx's idea of creating currency and to control the people and steal the wealth of the people to keep them subjugated, right? So that is the root of the current monetary system. Fiat currency has been around for a long time, but the current rendition, where the central banks control the printing and contraction to the interest rates, that is actually Marxist. And I love the fact that we're seeing what's happening right now in the markets, where the dollar is crashing. Even in the DXY, the dollar is crashing against 6 other currencies, and it's dying against gold and silver, because we've mentioned this in our channel before and on your channel this morning when you interviewed me. It just takes time for liquidity and currency to trickle down into the economy, and gold and silver is an accounting measure for how much liquidity and how much currency is in the economy. And I think your story is a fantastic one, and I think our viewers will love your background. So the next question is, tell us about your background.
All right, so I've shared some of this on my channel, and some of this will come out on my video tomorrow too. Like I said, my resume is all over the place. My background's pretty diverse. So I grew up in a family. My grandfather started a savings and loan years ago, and why did he do that? Well, he was a mortgage broker, and he was giving loans out, and he worked with a real estate tycoon that had a lot of real estate projects, very wealthy, and he couldn't get the loans he wanted. Okay. Also, they understood that there were a lot of people in the community that couldn't get loans. So they started a savings and loan, or a savings and thrift, as I think they were called more properly back in the day. And it was not too hard to get a charter there. Good luck getting a charter today for a new bank. Just ask Rick Rule about that. And Battle Bank, it can be really hard. I've kind of followed for years as they've tried to get that put in place, and now they have it. But they created this institution to help the little guy, to be able to help, the little store owner, the person that is opening up their first restaurant, a person that is, buying their first commercial real estate project. And so they were very successful. They had the best rating of all lending institutions in the country. And everything got taken out in 2008. So I was getting ready, just coming out of Northwestern with a master's degree in analytics and advertising, to take over my dad's board position on this New York Stock Exchange bank that we still had a lot percentage of ownership of. And the co-founder still had a lot of ownership in it as well. And I was halted. I couldn't do that. And it really came down to, there were some issues that were going on in 2007, but we were starting to see major cracks already happening in the financial market. And then we got into 2008, and basically everything, just broke loose there. The savings loan went from having 0 foreclosures to having a lot of foreclosures. And it's primarily focused in California at the time. So you run into, California was the epicenter of where everything started to unwind from the real estate market. And the other thing is, and I didn't mention this to you earlier, Daniel, but I will mention this. As far as I know, every savings and loan had Federal Reserve members sitting on the board. With our savings and loan, it wasn't any different. We had 2 Federal Reserve members on the board. They knew exactly what kind of loans were being lent out to, the kind of people that were being lent to. And, the board of directors continued to tell those people to take it back to the Fed, that they need to get rid of negative amortization loans. They need to stop doing loans to subprime, clients. And one of the problems that kind of arose from all of that is what happened in 2008. You had a lot of bad loans being bundled with good loans. Now, savings and loans used to be more profitable, helping the little guy, until the 1980 scandal, and everything got tightened with regulations. They put the Federal Reserve members on the board, and it basically created a situation where savings and loans could only make money by being more risky with subprime and negative amortization loans. And so, in my opinion, it looks like you have a lot of the banking, people at the top, didn't want the savings loans around, and they were just looking for opportunities for them to fail. And 2008 was one that really hit it hard. So, I remember the day where my dad called me up and said, "Hey, if we don't get X amount of dollars by 5 o'clock, or 3 o'clock, or whatever, I was in Utah at the time. I guess 2 o'clock. The FDIC is going to take over the family business." So basically, we watched the stock go from $80 a share down to 5 cents. It got taken over, moved over. The assets were still in play, and it basically was taken from anybody that was a shareholder. So fast forward, I've done a lot of high tech. I've done a lot of real estate in my background. So, I've done a lot of transactions with real estate. I've been, a landlord. I have done commercial properties. I've also started a couple tech companies. And we got to 2008 and everything got completely wiped out. And we've had to start over a lot. So I ended up becoming an employee again in the middle of my career. And I've really enjoyed working in high tech. I've enjoyed working in the AI space, which is what I do today. But what I saw in 2021 was so much money printing from the pandemic that I knew for sure there was going to be a massive amount of inflation. And so I started buying gold at that time. And I just went down to a local jewelry store and asked if they had gold. And I bought my first, couple gold bars that were pamp bars for right around $1,750 each. And I thought, this is pretty cool. Once you get gold in your hands, you don't want to take it out of your hands. It's pretty good stuff. And my dad had been giving me silver the last few years as well. And so that really started my, my push into gold and silver. And then I was meeting with Yankee Stacking is another big channel, and also Stormy from Empire Precious Metals, and talking to them, and they convinced me to put a channel together. So I started a YouTube channel. You can find me at on YouTube at Stacking Surfer. And I decided to kind of make it fun. And I use that name for two reasons. I love to surf. And I also think we have the biggest and largest tsunami of gold and silver price appreciation priced in dollars that's coming. And so I want to help people surf these massive gold and silver waves that are coming. So it's kind of a play off of that. And I live in California, down by the beach. So anyway, that's really where I'm at. And I'm hoping to really, I guess I'm on a mission to help educate more people, wake them up, build a stronger community. We're starting down here in the grassroots in Southern California to build a stronger community. We're starting to put together dozens of people. We're hoping it gets to thousands that are like-minded, where we can do barter, we can do trading, we can buy and sell from each other. And we're also, just a quick plug, we're going to be at the Long Beach Coin Show. We'll have a booth. You just need to look up for Stacking Surfer. I think it's like 525 or something like that will be the booth number. But I'm having a blast. It's really just helping the community and, getting out there and stacking and making a difference.
Absolutely. I had myself muted. Yeah, man, I love your story because, it's interesting to see how people from the fiat economy, banking, in my case, stockbroker, we go from, thinking we understand how the world works in fiat terms. But like for me, when I got a sound money education from the Bitcoin cryptocurrency side, which is not the same as real sound money, the real sound money movement, which is gold and silver. And I thought I knew it all after I became a Bitcoiner. I was a Bitcoin maxi for a bit. Then I just became now I'm just a blockchain supporter. And when I watched Hidden Secrets of Money by Mike Maloney, and then I read Creature from Jekyll Island and like 15 other sound money books. I mean, I didn't even need to read the books. It clicked. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my, that's why that's how the interest rates work. Like it blew my mind. It was a complete 180-degree worldview shift for me, and it just made literally everything make sense. Government, the education, the arts, like religion, like there isn't an aspect of human society that money doesn't affect, because money is just a means of representing our economic energy. And
Yes.
when it comes to our economic energy, where we store our economic energy is what matters. Do we store it in heaven? Do we put our efforts in heaven to store treasures in heaven? Do we put our efforts in real money or fiat currency to barter and trade? Or are we putting our economic energy into ideas that could change the world, like philosophers or even religious figures, like Jesus changed the world? Like it or not, Stalin, Hitler, all them had ideas that changed the world, and you can store your economic energy in different areas. And there isn't a single area of life that money or our economic energy doesn't affect. In fact, I think the entire premise of the Marxism and communism is the labor and the economic energy of labor and the people, the proletariat, and everything, right? So, I love how we have, like, your story and my story. We came from a fiat background and we gone to the real money, and it just makes everything click and make sense, right? So,
Yeah, it does. And I think the thing just to point out to people with that too is the currency was not always fiat. Okay. If
right.
you go back to 1971, so I live in Nixon's old stomping grounds here, and a lot of people like to just blame Nixon for the whole thing. He was the president, right? So the buck stops there. However, he's got influencers like Harry Kissinger and other people that really pushed hard on this idea of we have to stop the French and the Germans from taking all their gold. So we need to hurry and make it so you can't redeem it anymore. And then basically they came up with the idea of let's just completely decouple the dollar from gold. And the crazy thing is the markets went up, which makes no sense, except that it does make sense because now they knew there was a lot of liquidity coming and the markets had to go up in order to price in all the money printing that was going to start coming, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you go back far enough, the currency used to be backed and redeemable by gold and silver, and it isn't anymore. And so as soon as you take that off, that's where you start to have the debasement. That's where you start to have the issues that come into play. And to your point, when you have a system like this, it also creates a tremendous amount of debt.
Yeah.
You go back far enough, the United States really didn't have any debt, and then all of a sudden now we've got 38 trillion, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 50 or more trillion by the end of the decade.
Yeah. Agreed. And at our channel, I love how you want to build a community of people that will use gold and silver, the barter, or actually use in commerce. We talked about that on your show. And that's what we do here at Cities for Sound Money. We promote the use of sound money and protect people's rights to do so. And our education foundation, Sound Money Movement, is there to educate people on the necessity of sound money for a free society and a free economy to exist. And teaching people how to use gold and silver in commerce is essential. You asked how can people get involved. Well, Cities for Sound Money, if you want to effectuate change in your laws, join Cities for Sound Money. Once we have about 20-25 people, we will train you on how to go and lobby and make gold and silver legal tender. Even in your state, California, we haven't had a lot of success in blue states in the past, but we're really pushing hard in Maryland. And if Maryland actually makes gold and silver legal tender, gets rid of all taxation on gold and silver, maybe even capital gains, that is a blueprint of how we can go to California, how we can go to New York and all New Jersey and all these other states and use that same model that we used in Maryland to effectuate change in the law. So, you have a background in the markets and trading, and we have a few questions from our audience. And the first one comes from Juan Tiller. He says, "Can you please explain overnight margin calls pertaining to silver and its effect on the next day's open prices?" I can answer this, but I'm going to let you because you know it pretty well as well.
Yeah. So, okay, a couple things I'm going to tell you. I have personal experience as well. So, I was blessed to be able to be given some stock from my grandfather in the savings and loan that he started, and I borrowed against some of it at one point. I never over leveraged myself, so I borrowed a small percentage to buy real estate. And when everything was going down in 2008, I got margin calls every morning from my stockbroker that I owed more money. After about 7 or 8 of those calls, I said, just sell everything. I'm done hearing from you. Don't do it anymore. Stop calling me. And so, really to get to that, when you're looking at margin calls, so the first thing I'll explain with the margin calls, usually, the way that it works is there's money that is owed. You're borrowing against it. You're using, in this case, it would be silver as collateral. And if you've got a margin call, you basically have to produce the silver, or you've got to be able to pay off the loan that's in place. So what, I don't do it with silver specifically in this area. I don't leverage myself that way. I primarily, have mining stocks or stack with physical. I do vault as well. But if I understand the question correctly, from my experience, what would be happening there is the margin call is forcing people to liquidate silver or silver positions in order to pay that loan back. And therefore, it's driving the price down because you have a lot of sellers. And when you have to do that on a margin call, it's not like you have a choice on what price you want to pay. You're going to pay whatever the whatever the ask is. And so you're going to have issues with that. You're just going to have to go with what the market says.
Yeah. And also, if you don't liquidate your silver, you just have to deposit more cash to cover.
Yeah. You either have to cover it with cash, or you got to liquidate your silver. So a lot of times what happens is you get liquidation of silver, and that's what's going to cause the silver price to go down because of the margin.
Yeah. And that has been the practice. Hear me? I just lost video. Okay, there we go.
I can hear you.
Mr. Hammy, that has worked in the past. If the banks wanted to drive the price down, they would do it, and it would last weeks, even months, before it recovers. But that tactic of margin calls hasn't worked. It would only go down for a few hours or maybe a day. More recently, now, to be as objective as possible, there are two views. There is the fact that the institutions are purposely driving the price down, and the other is that they are just responding to liquidity issues and are just doing what the institutions do, right? So wherever you stand, I think it's a mix of the two, honestly. But there are two views, that they're purposely trying to drive the price down, or they're just doing what the free market does, and they're running out of cash and they just need liquidity. So that's what is really happening when they increase the margin calls, and what happens in the next day's open prices really depends on how many people sell contracts, or if they fill the with cash, right? So if they're filling up with cash, they're not selling the silver. If they're not filling up with cash, then they're selling the silver. The next open, you will probably see a downturn. But remember, the next day is only 1 hour. It closes at 5. It opens at 6 Eastern. So silver's down $1.06 right now. So that's what usually happens. There's another question. I don't know if you've been paying attention as closely as others have, but Sick Liaisons asked, any ideas as to what happened to cause the sudden $83 spike in gold at 3:30 Eastern today? Do you know what happened? Why? No.
I don't, but I mean, to your point you were mentioning just earlier, in a normal market where you go back to 1980, you go back to 2011, you go back into any time, between there, in a normal market, you have a lot more supply and demand going on. I would say this market's broken from that supply and demand. There's a lot of other factors right now. I think we're in a strategic resource war. I think it's, super strong. And I don't think most people see it that way, but it's East versus West on who's going to control the silver market. And anyway, there's a lot that you can go into with that. But outside of that, what we're seeing is when we have a dip, it gets bought. Yeah. It doesn't stay there very long. So we saw silver basically take a rise to, and I have to look at the actual numbers. It might be gold and silver. It might just be silver by itself, but basically the entire market cap of Bitcoin in one day, and then come back down. That was a huge move we've never seen before. And it freaked the markets out. And what it signaled to Wall Street is, hey, pay attention over here. Something's going on. People are trying to figure out what's happening. So, why would there be an $83 spike today on it? Someone's probably playing the market is what's going on there. You either had a lot of call options just come in real fast, or you had a buyer that came in and bought a tremendous amount of gold, and it's spiking it. But most of the time, at least in modern days, it's going to be calls that are pushing it up.
Yeah, and I think there's some even bigger geopolitical issues right now, right? Like, if you compare what the Reichmark, I was saying Deutschmark, but I'm correcting myself. It's the Reichmark.
Yeah,
Reichmark. One Reichmark was the equivalent of like 0.3 grams of gold. And after World War One, when they were printing for reparations, you start seeing literally a hyperinflation, right? And it went from one Reichmark for one like 0.3 grams of gold. Eventually, it was like a billion Reichmarks. And you'll see if you hyperimpose the graph of what it was costing for basically a third of a gram, um, for the Reichmark, and you take the dollar and go down like back to like 2011 or 2012, whatever, and superimpose that, you're going to see a very similar move.
Yep.
Almost exactly. Like in 1919, there was this rise and dip. That was a rise and dip in 2021 or 2022. And then there's this hyperbolic increase. And it's almost an exact move. And then there's another chart that is showing you the percentage change, right? There's the dollar change, the Reichmark change. But then what was interesting as the amount of currency increased, the percentage changes were drastic. 10-15% up, 10-15% down. It's the exact same thing. And what that is telling me is we're starting to see the death of a fiat currency, at least a changing in the order. Because the normal length of a reserve currency is around, let's say 90 years. We're past that. If you factor in after World War One, everybody, the world gave us gold and silver. Then World War Two, we're past that 90-year mark, and we're due for a new world order. Same thing with the pound. Same thing with the Spanish real. Same thing with the what is it called? Netherlands. I forget what the ducats, I think it is. So whatever the currency was, there was multiple world reserve currencies, and the average is around 75, 90 years. We're due for a new change. And there are things going on behind the scenes in the shadow banking world, all out wars right now of who's going to control the future of finance. Is it going to be the Western world, or is it going to be the Eastern world? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. I think we're seeing people in the shadow banking world buying and selling gold and silver, trying to manipulate the global economy. And there's even things just right in front of us. What's going on with Greenland? What's going on with NATO? Fear, Cuba. There's a lot of things going on. So it isn't just the currency. You compound the inflation with uncertainty and fear, and you're starting to see people buy and sell. Like I got people coming into our coin shop who are selling and buying. And the people who are buying are afraid of what's happening to the dollar. The people who are selling, they're selling for different reasons. But it's because they need liquidity for whatever purposes they're selling their gold and silver for. So it's a fascinating situation that we're in, and we're literally living history. This is like the Great Depression. Remember this, guys. What we're going through right now, they're going to write history books about this. Maybe not books; it'll be online, whatever the future of education is. But this is a time that is going to be marked out in history as a new world order, and what that is going to look like, we can only surmise. But there is going to be a new financial world. I think it's going to be electronic, and I think it's going to be backed by real world assets, whether it's Jim Rickard's theory of a 40% backed currency with a margin. If we buy too much, we got to sell. If we sell too much, we got to buy gold, or it's a completely different economic system.
Yeah, the other stat in there too is I believe republics live about 250 years, and we're now in the 250th year. So it's a turning point, right? Now I tend to think these things are kind of planned out a lot further and bigger. It's not just random that it happens. There's some natural cycles that happen in nature, but a lot of this stuff is, when you get into finance, is planned by man. They kind of decide to do different things. But I think we're at a turning point. We have the ability right now to fix the problem. It's not a great solution. It's going to be rough. The best way to get through it is to have things that are in sound money. I still have a lot of equity in my home. That definitely will take a hit if things play out the way I think they're going to. But I have a home I get to, can stay in. But I think you're going to really see a huge difference if you have more of your wealth into sound money, specifically gold and silver. I think cryptocurrencies could do okay for some people, but it's unknown exactly how that's going to work. And so we really don't know. We talked about it earlier today on the interview with you. Daniel, about blockchain being a great technology, but the question is, what's it really worth? And how much are tokens really worth is another issue. Gold and silver has a track record of 6,000 years or so, and so you've got a lot more security around that. Central banks are buying it; they're storing it. Countries are starting to have strategic reserves of silver. And so, something's going to eventually happen there. I saw another comment in here too, someone talking about just silver going and dropping back down to the 40s or 50s. Anything's possible. But what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the dips being bought. And so we're seeing a lot of fear. We're seeing more fear and concern that if I don't buy my silver now, I'm not going to be able to, and that it's going to keep going up than we do people thinking that we're going to go way back down to a lower price and it's going to stay there. That's why you're seeing these moves. And like you mentioned, the Weimar Republic, if you look at it, the Deutschmark or the Reichsmark, it's Deutschmark after it fell, Reichsmark before it. I do have one of those. I picked one up from a friend, and it's a really cool coin. It's from like I want to say it's like an 1880 or something like that. And it's a 20. So I think it's, a little under a quarter ounce, maybe.
Yeah. It's a little over. Right. So the Latin Monetary Union was 0.1867 grams, and I think the Reich mark was a little over that. Okay. So just order.
It's around like a quarter ounce or so of gold, and it's a history piece for me. Like, I'm not going to get rid of that. I'm holding on to it. And I was looking for one of those because it represents something. If you look at the charts, of 1929, and you look at the stock market today, these things start to look very similar. I think this time is different. I think we learned a lot from the Great Depression. I don't think we're going to go into this, decade-long depression of 20 to 30% job destruction, and people just can't find jobs, and whatever jobs they can find don't pay well. I think this time they'll just put the money printer on, and they're just going to run us up into inflation. So I think this time, instead of going into a Great Depression, we're going to follow Germany and what happened there. And if you look at that chart, it's possible that we are in this hockey stick move up. It's possible that hockey stick just keeps going up and up and up. It is. I know a lot of people are looking back at 1980 and 2011 and saying, hey, it's going to just drop right back down. If you believe that, I would ask you to at least go study what happened in Germany as everything was unwinding with hyperinflation there. And it won't be the same, but it could be similar. And they got to the point where they didn't even have enough ink to print on both sides of the note. And they ran out of ink, and people basically had to have wheelbarrows worth to go buy bread and things like that because it just got out of hand. We won't have those same issues because we can do things digitally here if we need to. But, I'm trying to wake up as many people as I can to this because it's going to make a massive difference. And then, like to your point earlier, Daniel, I want to build a community. Like, I don't know if I'm going to say the right number or not, but I believe it was something around 10 million people voted for President Trump in California. And the reason I mention that is there's a huge amount of people in California that are very conservative that might be more prone to sound money and open to it. They probably don't know about it yet. But the state does have a lot of people, and I have two options. I can move to another state, another jurisdiction, or I can try to change the state I'm in now. Those are my two options. And if I can try to change it here so we can have sound money recognized here and we can change some of the laws, I'm all for it. So I'm definitely going to be seeing if I can work with you guys to try to make that change. I don't know how much of a headwind we're going to have. I imagine it's going to be pretty stiff, though.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that this is a different time. I think that people who are saying that it's going to come back down. Look, we don't know the future, but what we do know is that this is the first time in human history that the entire planet is on a fiat standard. Every single central bank in the world has printed currency into oblivion.
Yep.
When you measure the liquidity globally, it's in the hundreds of trillions of dollars in derivatives. And there's a reason why the central banks are buying gold and silver. There's a reason why the central banks are dumping the dollar and U.S. treasuries. There's a reason why people don't trust the dollar anymore, and that there is a shadow war going on to see who's going to win the future. There's a reason why Europe is trying to minimize cash. There's a reason why we're going into stable coins, forcing to buy the U.S. Treasuries. There's reasons for these moves in the financial sector, and typically it's because government wants to control and understand what is going on in the economy, and not benevolently. I don't know. I mentioned this in your show. There's never been a time in human history that a government has willingly give up control and power, ever. So I think this is different. I think we're actually seeing maybe not the end of the dollar, but at least the end of this fiat currency and this monetary order. And the only way that, look, Mike Maloney puts it most succinctly. In 2014, Hidden Secrets of Money came out, and he said that we are going to experience the greatest wealth transfer in the history of the world. And that is what happened during the Great Depression. Those who saw the problems with the dollar being printed, and there wasn't enough gold and silver, and look, the Federal Reserve didn't print enough currency either, went to the banks, pulled out their silver dollars and pulled out their gold dollars. And those who had the physical gold actually saw the greatest increase of wealth when the currency collapsed. The U.S. government hates admitting that they actually defaulted on their debt during the Great Depression. They defaulted. The U.S. government has defaulted on their debt before, and that's why they confiscated gold, so they can get the full purchasing power when they devalue the dollar, and take effect of the Kenelon effect. The Kenelon effect is those who are closest to the printing of the currency get the full purchasing power. In this case, they confiscated as much gold as possible, built Fort Knox, stuck the people's gold in Fort Knox, and then devalued the dollar, and they got the full purchasing power, and then they paid off the debt that was denominated in dollars versus denominated in gold. Now, is there going to be another confiscation? I don't know. Lynette Zhang, that is her big, her big talking point. Buy pre-33 gold. Get it graded. Get it slabbed because it's a collectible. It won't be confiscated. I think we are seeing, and we're living history, and we're living monetary history. And, the best way to protect yourself is to protect yourself in money, gold and silver. So, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And there's a couple of comments. Let me throw this up there. So, Jared, I feel for you, man. I know taxes are sky high there. My brother lives in Illinois. His taxes on his home are so much more than somebody in Missouri that has millions of dollars in property. So,
yeah. Well, I'll put a point out for that real quick. One, I'm totally for ending the Fed. Okay, guys, I don't think it should be here. I don't even think the 16th Amendment's even legal. We'd have to ask Benjamin about that one. But to me, it looks like they did not have 3/4 of Congress in there when they voted for that. They had 3/4 of the people in the room, but that's not how the law works. So I could be wrong on that, but it doesn't look like that's legal. Fed does not look legal, and the IRS doesn't look legal to me. So I'm all about, having a government. I'm all about paying taxes to keep the government going, but I do think it's gotten bloated with bureaucracy over 250 years. So I would like to see things get fixed. Now, on the state side, when you get into property taxes, I totally disagree with property taxes, because if you pay off a home, you shouldn't have to continue to pay a small amount or lose the home. I definitely think that needs to be fixed and changed. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing states like Florida get rid of it. And that really entices me to think about moving from, California to Florida. I was born here. I've lived all over the country. I've come back here for specific reasons around health for my family. There's a lot of doctors here, plus the climate is ideal for us. But I don't know how long we'll be able to stay. But yeah, property taxes are insane here. We have basically price controls on property tax. So I'm disincentivized to ever move to a different home in the state, because my property taxes will double on me if I do it. And then I pay between 10 and 12% state income tax. So we are taxed to death here, and it's definitely a consideration. If I add up all my taxes, I'm well over 50% of my income goes to taxes. So if you're moving to California, just know what you're getting yourself into.
And we would love to have you in Florida. We have no income tax. We have a pretty decent sales tax, the 6% in the state. And we have no capital gains tax. And the biggest fight right now in the state government is getting rid of property taxes, or at least having an exemption as high as $500,000. So we would love you to come to the free state of Florida and leave what I call the communist state of California.
Yeah, it is the communist state of California, and we're ruled by a dictator here that doesn't tell the truth. I'm going to just say that out here publicly. I don't like the guy. I don't know how you have recalls and then you have and then you basically have him on the ballot and he wins by 80%. I do not think the elections are fair and free here in this state. I even go out on a limb and say that if we had free and fair elections here by citizens with paper ballots at the polls, not mail-in ballots anymore, I think it might even flip to red. I think it's much more of a what do they call it? A purple state than most people realize. But the other thing I'll just throw out there to this too is it's important to understand the jurisdiction you live in and where you're at. If you've got a lot of precious metals, there's certain states that make it easier for you to use them as legal tender, or they have more favorable tax laws. And there's other states that are horrendous about it. And so, if you're in the place where you ever go to convert some of your gold and silver, it's important to understand where you're at. Know the laws and things. But we ought to change the whole country. I'd like to see the federal system do the same thing as the states are doing and stop putting everything in the form of collectibles and taxing us at 28%. That to me is criminal. The founding fathers would be rolling in their graves.
They are rolling in the graves. We're working also with congressmen and senators. Kim Coleman from Goldback, she is the chairwoman of the Sound Money Trade Association, which we chartered. She met with Senator Mike Lee about getting rid of capital gains. We did a fundraiser through our super PAC with Byron Donalds, and he said he was going to look at pushing legislation to get rid of capital gains. And also my congressman, Mike Herodopoulos, who's the chairman of the freshman class in Congress of congressmen in the House of Representatives. He's also open to it. So we're making some moves. We're hopefully, and I know that there are others that have talked to Secretary Bessent, even the Trump administration, about doing it. So I think possibly in this administration, we could possibly see the end of capital gains on gold and silver and money. And then in the states that have made gold and silver legal tender, there's even a legal argument because it's USC, I think, or IRS 481. I forget the exact number. I used to know off the top of my head. I have to take a look at it. But there is a subsection, the subsection about capital gains on gold and silver. If it's an IRA, it's not taxed. But also it says if it's issued by any state, there isn't a collectibles tax. So there could even be an argument for states that make gold and silver legal tender that it is taxed at your income rate. Now, the person who wants to do that and take the federal government to court, go ahead, give us a call. We have General Counsel Benjamin Schaefer, our Director of Operations, and also I'm pretty sure Larry Hilton from the UPMA. They will be more than happy to discuss those details with you. But if you live in one of the 11 states that pass gold and silver's legal tender, it could legally be possible to not pay the collectibles tax and only pay the income rate tax. So that's just a theory. Let me.
It'd be awesome. A lot of people talk about losing their gold and silver in a boating accident. I think it's horrible that the system is set up in a way that forces people to make decisions they would rather not make. And it makes an honest man a forgetful man. It's maybe the way to put it. And, it is a shame. And one thing I wanted to point out too, real quick on the gold you mentioned about Lynette Zhang too. There's three ways to really play gold and, a confiscation type of a scenario. It's possible that the only thing they will confiscate again, and the only thing that's going to survive is pre-33 gold. If you fully believe that with all your heart, then I think you get integrated collectibles of old gold. It's still pretty awesome. And it's stuff that is, that is old, and there's price ranges for every person, from more common coins to very rare. A middle of the road one is to get non-graded raw pre-33 coins. They tend to be right around the same prices, or maybe even a little less than like a Gold Eagle or Buffalo. And if you're not worried about it at all, then Bullion's a great place for people to be at. because I think a lot of people have a lot of, concerns. Are we going to have a big confiscation? What's going to happen? What can I do? They never came house to house. They never took it out of people's hands. So it just meant that they couldn't, use it as money. They had to kind of put it away for a long time until it became legal in the 50s again. But I'm a hedge stacker. I like to have a little bit of everything so that I'm kind of hedged against all scenarios, including, having some jewelry around too.
Yeah, no, 100%. I like jewelry too. I don't have a lot of gold jewelry, but I like wearing my wealth when I do. And silver now, just silver, the way that it's going up, it might be smart to start wearing some silver. But yeah, what's her name? Elizabeth Taylor. I think she never left the house unless she had like $30,000 to $50,000 worth of gold. And that's so.
Yeah.
Collectibles, they didn't confiscate. Jewelry, they didn't confiscate. But I think you might even be able to get away with modern coinage that's graded, because once you get modern coinage graded, it becomes a collectible. But that's it has to be tested. It's a theory that has to be tested, and let's see if that actually works out, if they do confiscate gold again. But yeah, before Jared, are there any other like thoughts that you want to share, or anything you want to share before we wrap this up?
I'm full of thoughts. That's one of the reasons my wife told me to go start a channel. She's like, I don't want to hear about coins all day long. Go talk to your friends, make friends, and go do that.
Yeah.
And she used to be a little bit more hesitant on me buying a bunch of gold and silver. Now she's fully on board, and she sees it. And when I say, hey, we need to sell something, she's like, yeah, sell the stocks, or, take cash out of the bank. Don't touch the gold and silver stuff. So, last thing I'll probably say here is, for those that are watching this, you have three different ways to kind of be in the metal space. One is you can be a trader, someone that's trying to make money off of quick moves. You can be an investor, someone that's going to basically buy today and they plan on getting out of it down the road. Or you can be a stacker, which is someone that realizes that it is sound money. It is the base and foundation of any kind of exchange. And it is money. So why would you trade it for anything else until you actually need to? And that's only if you can't barter with it in the first place. And you can be all three. But I think it's important for people to do some research, to understand, to kind of think in their own head, why are they doing this? Why are they buying precious metals, or why are they looking into it? Why has it been around for so long? Why has it been what we've used for money? And I think it's important for people to start to understand that. And when you start to understand that, it's not about what the price is anymore. I had Bill Holter on the other day, and I was talking to him, and he's like, stop asking what the price is going to be for gold and silver, and start looking at how many ounces do you have. And so the one thing I'll caution you guys on is, right now is the time to accumulate ounces, but it's actually a time where you can get some pretty cool collectible modern coins for about the same price as the regular non-collectible coins. So you can find some great stuff. And I bought a bunch of that stuff early on that was a little more expensive, and we've caught up to the price, and it has not performed as well. It all depends on when you buy things. Okay. My grandfather told me two big sayings. One was, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Okay. So when you're doing trading and investing, you need to take profits. You need to not get greedy. You need to set a goal on what kind of a return you're looking for. And when you start hitting those returns, you start taking profits, and then you play with the house's money and you continue to take profits. The second one is, well, actually there's three. The second one's real estate. Location, location, location. One thing I'll always tell you guys is, anytime you buy real estate, you don't go for what's cheap. You go for what's going to be easier to sell. Okay. You always want to be able to liquidate out of it. And then the last one he said was, you make your money when you buy. And so, it's really important when you guys are buying precious metals to shop around, look for deals, and, not chase what some YouTubers telling you need to go get for that moment, but look for what you can get a good deal for. I don't buy a specific coin. I buy what's on sale, and I buy what I have access to. One of the last purchases I made were a bunch of 10-ounce Scottsdale stackers, 20-ounce Scottsdale stackers, and a bunch of dimes. that's what was available, and I was able to get it way below spot price, and so it made sense to me. And the other person wanted out, and that was about a month ago, and I'm really happy I did it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the stacker mentality, the cheapest metal that you can get, right? It doesn't matter the coinage. And then there's people who stack on coinage. And I'll close with this thought. When it comes to wealth management, now I'm going to throw this up here again. This is not financial advice. This is just what I think. There's this idea of thirds. A third of your wealth should be in real estate. A third of your wealth should be in cash liquidity, and a third of your wealth should be in investment or businesses, right? So liquidity for me is gold and silver and cash, right? And then you have different percentages for the liquidity. Real estate as well. And it's because all three of these sectors, businesses or investments that you can multiply your money, you're putting your money to work. Real estate is a great hedge against it's a hedge against inflation, especially in a fiat economy, but it's also real wealth is. I mean, there's a reason why the wealthiest people in the world own land. And the other third is liquidity, right? And you want to keep that balance. You want to have a balance of liquidity, a balance of what you invest in the business and in other investments, and then a balance in real estate. And I think those third and a third is just a good practice. And it's like a three-legged stool. Because let's say something happens to your business and the real estate market tanks. Now you have liquidity to buy more land or whatever you need. Or if you need liquidity, you can actually leverage your land or your business. So there's a good balance there. But definitely with gold and silver, I think there should be a percentage of how much you need in fiat, especially in the fiat economy. And then I like a 75-25 split between gold and silver, because and the 75 is in gold, because gold is more stable, it's money, and has kept up with inflation better than silver. And silver is more speculative and more of an industrial metal now, and it fluctuates a lot. And it can actually increase, and you got to rebalance the gold silver ratio. We're at 47 ounces now of silver to gold. And then you can just trade the silver into gold and rebalance it to the 25.75. So, I think very wise, and we'll definitely have you on again, Jared. I think with what you want to do with building your community and your background in tech, I think there's a lot we can do with Citizens for Sound Money, especially on the education side and the lobbying side. So thank you for coming on our channel.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just getting started. So this is early years of I have plans.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things I want to do, and be happy to come back on. Thank you, Daniel.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. That is our Sound Money Matters live interview with the Stacking Surfer. Thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and give a thumbs up, a like on this video. That helps with the algorithms to get this video out there. The more people that like, the better. The algorithm is going to share this video. And if you haven't done so yet, join Citizens for Sound Money. You can either join on YouTube or go to our website and become an annual member at $25 a person, or at $100 right now, because silver is over $100. You're actually getting a discount when you join Citizens for Sound Money, because we will send you a half ounce of digital silver through Kinesis if you join at the $100 membership. So I think it's going to be about $55, give or take, of silver. So you're going to pay $45 for the annual membership. You'll be supporting a good cause. Everybody, thank you so much for watching our channel, and we will catch you next time on Tuesday next week at 6 p.m. and we'll have a premiere. We're interviewing Keith Weiner from Monetary Metals this Friday at 7 p.m. for our premiere. All right, everybody, have a great week. Keep stacking. God bless.